Hi, and welcome to the How I Became a Perfumer podcast. In each episode, we explore the different roles in the flavor and fragrance industry, as well as talk to founders of independent projects. My name is Tanya Mironova. I'm your host and a career coach. I'm here to guide you through the world of flavor and fragrances and inspire you to create your dream career. My guest for today's episode is Jérôme Di Marino, a remarkable talent in the fragrance industry, currently working for Man. Jérôme's journey from the French Alps to the forefront of fragrance industry in Paris and Barcelona, I believe, is a testament to his dedication and passion for perfumery. Jérôme, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for hosting me.
I'm very glad you came. So, Jérôme, I would like to build our interview in a little bit different way than usually, because I noticed from my previous research that you are really into connecting to feelings and emotions in your work, I believe probably in your life. And I would like to really ask you questions based on these feelings, but in relation to your career. Would that be fine?
Okay, let's do that.
So when I was reading one of the interviews I really liked, you were talking about your passion for drawing. And if somebody checks your Instagram, and I believe our listeners will do, they will understand what I'm talking about, because it's really, really something I really love your drawings as well.
Thanks, I appreciate.
And in this interview, you wrote that drawing for you has always been escape from the rest. So could you please elaborate on that? What may be feelings, emotions, or was it just a natural process of growing up when we try to abandon our feelings and emotions? So what was that for you?
Okay, it is funny that you start with this topic because many times I do a relation between how I have to create in fragrances. I mean, what are the skills that you need to create fragrances regarding the patience that it might that you might have to, or the details that you have to take care about when you are crafting a fragrance. And it's true that I was drawing a lot when I was a kid. Actually, I wanted to dedicate myself to an art school because I was using drawings like it was a passion, and it was a way of escaping, not physically, but to let my mind free and wander somewhere else. So I was spending a lot of time doing that, and it's true that that's not finally the path that I chose, because I didn't think at that time that my skills were good enough to live from that passion, I would say. But I get back to drawings during COVID because the time stopped literally, and I took the time to come back to my first passion. But when I was a teenager, and when I was thinking about what would be the path that I should pick up, it's true that I chose a safer option, I would say. Like, I did scientific studies because it was a safer way, and I thought that it would let open many doors to the future, because I didn't really know what to do with my life, my professional life. I'm always very surprised that we ask young people to make a choice at such a young age, and I was a bit anxious about that, because in a way the system makes you believe that you have to make a choice very quick, and that you don't have later options. Like, you can't change. You take this path, it's literature or scientific. Like, it's two words, and it doesn't mean that you can go back to the one you left on the side later. So in a way, I chose sciences because it was a safer way. to go ahead. And I was studying in Nice, in French Riviera. It's very close to Grasse, actually, which is the capital of perfumery. So I thought that maybe I could work on the synthesis of new molecules or molecules for perfumery. And when I starting looking for this this escape door, in a way, I would say, because I liked science, but I wasn't convinced that it was done for me, like searching, and I wasn't sure about that. And when I discovered in Grasse the existence of the position of perfumer, it came as an evidence, because it was the perfect way for me to go back to my creative aspirations and with my university background, actually.
Well, I'm so fascinated by all what you've described and wanted to ask you because we are really, it feels like you reflect a lot on what you felt at some point and about feeling that science is not probably your thing. I mean, well, it's just a very rude, probably a very straightforward way to say it. But how did it feel? I mean, have you feel bored or have you feel like what were that?
I would say that um, when you are studying, sometimes you don't know what you want to dedicate just your day-to-day studies to. And when I discovered perfumery, it was at a time where we didn't have that much access to the informations that we have today through social networks, through TikTok, through Instagram or web pages. When I was starting looking for some information about how to become a perfumer, um, there was a book uh, written from Jean-Claude Helena, which is a famous perfumer, and there wasn't that much more than that. There is a lot of books about the past of perfumery, about the eras of the where it's coming
Yeah,
from
yeah, the
the incense,
bottles,
from Egypt,
everything.
from
Yeah.
yes, from the perfumery at the time of Marie Antoinette and Versailles. But I was okay, it's fine, but I want to know where is the perfumery world now? How could we have access to that? So it was a bit frustrating because there were kind of such a mystery about how to become a perfumer at that time, and by chance I discovered that there was that school in Versailles, which is called ISIPGA and has been created by the Guerlain family, and at that time it was the only one. It was the main. It was not the only one, but it was the main one, and so that was the goal.
Yeah. So for you, if I hear you correctly, basically it was the contrast maybe you felt which made you, which reassured you about your future. I mean, you were actually into something. I mean, you've been working on that, studying on science. But when you actually saw this book and then maybe other books and then the brochure which you mentioned, about the Sipka. So then on this, like this contrast really helped you understand what you want at that point.
Yes, because I knew that I was a creative person, and I was looking for a way to find a creative job. So
Right.
that was the perfect match
Yeah.
with the when I discovered the fragrance world. And it was complicated because you don't know that you are good at it
No,
since you haven't tried it. So
no.
you are trying to project yourself in the future. Will I be good to that or not? It's
Yeah.
quite tricky because you need a lot of ideas, but perfumery is also um, a position when you are a perfumer. You need technical skills,
Yeah.
and you have to learn it. So you don't know if you will be able to be at the level to be that creative and technically at the same time. So it's when you start to study perfumery, it's a bit like um, a mystery. You don't really know if since you don't work on your first formula, on your first project, you don't really know what's your value for that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's complicated, but
It
you have
is.
to. It's a lot of work,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to trust in yourself and go ahead.
But when you started with Isipka, and well, trust in yourself, I believe, was already present. Did you feel that well, it was good that I took the scientific part first, because otherwise I probably wouldn't be eligible for the studies, or I wouldn't be able to do them with ease.
There's few people that are coming from other backgrounds than chemistry or scientific background, and that are brilliant. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, what I what I take from my chemistry background is more the rigor, the way
Mm-hmm.
you process things. It's more about this um, organization that chemistry needs to be applied. It's not that I don't think chemistry in my day-to-day work when I think about
Yes.
creative processing fragrances, but because there are many other people more qualified than I do in chemistry. If we
Well.
need help
Mm-hmm.
on this
Mm-hmm.
side
Mm-hmm.
because a fragrance is not stable or whatever, so it's just I just take from my chemistry background this kind of skills that you need as a perfumer, being
Mm-hmm.
rigorous with what you are
Mm-hmm.
doing, because it's this sense of details, like you are measuring, you are doing formulas, you are measuring quantities,
Yeah.
and you 1 gram is 1 gram. It's not 101. It's one. So rounding things, and you have to be the precision. The precision is very important.
Yeah, right. It's very interesting that it's not so it's the approach which helps. It's not exactly
Totally.
the knowledge, because well, basically you could find knowledge, and as you've said, you can find specialists who are
Mhm.
more into something particular, like about what
Yes.
to do to not have any issues well while composing afterwards a big
Uh-huh.
chunk of formula. However,
Is it?
well, it's really good that you mentioned it, because I believe some people think that, oh, if I am not really deep into chemistry or into science, maybe I should not be in this profession. But as you've said,
Mhm.
it definitely helps just to have the approach, and just travel with it further.
For me, it's not necessary. I
Hmm.
I mean, creativity is more important,
Right.
that you feel it inside, and then you can learn the technical skills. I don't say that it's easy, it's a long path, but in a way, I don't think that chemistry is the main point for a perfumer.
Right. I would agree with that. My next question is a little bit maybe tricky one, but if you could help us a little bit, it would be interesting. In one again of the interviews, it's written that you, after your studies, you had a couple of years as an intern trainee perfumer at Givaudan.
Mhm.
And if I'm not wrong, just correct me at any point. The trainee program at Givaudan takes 4 years right now.
Okay, actually, you are talking about the internal school at Givaudan,
Uh huh.
but I was in an internship in Givaudan when I was in Isipka.
Ah,
So
I
it was
got it.
previously
Ah.
to normally I should have been like doing this during 2 years, and then the plan was
Mm-hmm.
to join the school. But
Uh huh.
life have some surprises sometimes. I arrived just in the middle of the bank crisis in 2008,
Mm-hmm.
and Givaudan was closing a factory in
Mm.
Lyon in France. So
Oh.
people get fired, not much people, but you
Mm-hmm.
you know it was quite complicated. So when my internship ended, I left Givaudan,
Uh-huh.
and that was a big question mark for me. You start
Mm.
practicing in the number one company of fragrances, and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
after that you say, okay, where am I going now? Like,
Exactly. Like the factory is closing. I mean, it's fascinating.
so I have many doubts at that moment. Um, because I've spent 2 years in Givaudan, where I've been trained by Nathalie Cheto. She's
Mhm.
perfumer, a senior perfumer. She's still working at Givaudan in Paris. And she offered me so much. She shared a lot about perfumery. It was kind of my initiation program, I would say, to
Yeah.
perfume world. And I've spent 2 years focusing on the learning of the raw materials mainly, and then I've
Uh-huh.
worked uh, on few alcohols, but you have to know very well your raw materials before playing
Mhm.
with them in a
Mhm.
formula, or,
Mhm.
or you wouldn't be understanding properly what you are doing. And then after Givaudan, um, by casualty, I would say, I have the opportunities to join Givenchy. So it
Oh.
wasn't at all my initial plan, but I thought, okay, why not? Let's take that experience. And I've spent in Givenchy 1 year. And
Mhm.
it was a really, really very very interesting experience because I was on the other side for the first time. And when you are working in a fragrance house, you have to accept the decisions from the customer, and sometimes you don't understand how it's processing, how it's working over there. So it was really interesting because I understood many things about customer language as well,
Mhm.
which are my customers now in my day to day. So I I understood a bit more about marketing plans, 5 years, 3 years marketing plans, or all the coordination with the factory. And because
Mhm.
I was in the position as an I would say, intermediary between the fragrance houses and the marketing team.
Mhm.
And then I was um, working when I arrived on a new masculine fragrance that they were briefing houses. It was the Gentleman Society. No, not the Society. A Gentleman Only. It
Uh-huh.
was the name of the project. And it was, in a way, it was really interesting, but it was a bit frustrating at the same time because I wanted to be on the other side. I was working on the project, but I felt that I was not outside, but almost outside of the project because I wasn't in the day-to-day creation of it. I mean that
Right.
once a week I was talking with the perfumers, and I was doing evaluation.
Uh-huh.
Actually, I was
Yeah.
saying, okay, the fragrance is great, but we need it to be a bit more woody or a bit less spicy or whatever. And then you wait a week or a
Uh-huh.
few days,
Uh-huh.
and you don't feel you know that they are doing this in the fragrance house, and you are just waiting.
And
So in
you're
a way,
just
it was
sitting there and
like,
nothing is going
yes,
on. Like,
and waiting for the next shipment or the next meeting to
Mhm.
work on it. So I had the confirmation that I wasn't made for that. I wanted to
Mhm.
go back to the creation, to the
Right.
day-to-day creation. But I've learned a lot. It was a really interesting experience, and I would totally recommend it to to anybody who wants to be a perfumer because you understand
Mhm.
a lot of things and you start seeing um what is um, the expectations. Even if in 10 years it changed a lot, the expectations of
Uh-huh.
of uh, what's the perfumer role in the creation.
Yeah.
But you are in a day-to-day life as a perfumer very exposed to failure, to
Mhm.
critics, and you have to get used to it, or
Yeah,
you
this is
won't
a tough
survive.
one.
I would say in a way, but yes, failure is a has a really important place in your
Mhm.
day-to-day work as a perfumer, because you
Wow.
you might work many projects at the same times, but the statistic is that you lose main part of it because it's a very competitive role, a very competitive industry. You have competition inside the fragrance house with other perfumers, so sometimes you work together with them, and the same day you work with them, and sometimes not. Sometimes they are your competitors. So that's something you have to learn how to deal with.
Yeah.
And then you have the competition outside, obviously. So that's in terms of personality, that might be sometimes a bit schizophrenic, but you have to know how to compose with that. And
Yeah.
the experience in the customer showed me a lot about the failure that you have to communicate to people that they worked 6 months very hardly on a project, but we didn't pick their creation. So that's hard on the both
Oh,
sides, I think.
we just made great advertising to a profession of a perfumer and also to other ones. If I may, I will return to a few points because I find them very important to reiterate with you. It seems again that because you got to the evaluator's job instead of the perfumer's job, which you intended previously, you again felt this contrast, which helped you realize what is that exactly you want. And I like it because some people think that it's just like very straightforward. And if, like, I don't know, if they made a suggestion about something, they don't even try other ways. I mean, they could go to the fragrance industry and look from the evaluator's side, or they could go and look from the marketing side or from another side, and then eventually end up doing something different. But then they will be really sure about it. I feel like that. And otherwise, I think it's sometimes difficult to be 100% sure that, okay, like it's the only way I want it to be.
If that's the only thing that you've seen, maybe it's hard to have a good judgment. So that's always interesting to have other experiences, to make you then be sure that you took the right decision. And you always learn from experiences, wherever it
Exactly.
is.
You could not, you couldn't learn if you didn't leave the house.
Of course.
Talking about failures, I really liked it. You reiterated it a few times that it's like a day-to-day thing. How do you manage those?
It's I don't have any good advice
No breathing
to
technique.
reveal about that, but it's about ego. It's about it's moving a lot of things inside, So I think that it's more that you have to keep believing in what you're doing. Like what I understood when I was at Givenchy is that, okay, I saw people doing their best, and sometimes they are out of the project, not because the fragrance was wrong, the fragrance was bad, or technically it wasn't at the point or whatever. It's just that sometimes you are not at the right place at the good moment, and it doesn't mean that you are not good enough for that. It's just that there are so many other parameters in the equation, I would say, that your skills and the quality of the work that you are delivering, it's not always the reason of the failure. So you have to assume that many other parameters are into the game, and sometimes you lose the game not just because you are not a good perfumer. It's just because sometimes you don't have the right proposal at the right moment, or maybe you'll go back to this idea that you have a strong olfactive idea, but maybe it's not mature enough. So you lose it on a project, you try again months later or 2 years later or whatever in another project, you work on it few months, you discover new technical things into this proper formula that you may improve, like you at the first project, it wasn't maybe powerful enough, and now you manage to make it bigger and bigger, and then you go step by step, um, making a better fragrance. And sometimes it's just that it wasn't mature enough, so you go back to it, and it's a long term work. Sometimes you don't have this, there's a bit a cliche about a creative person having an idea. Yes, you can have the idea, but you need the technical work on it to make it works.
Yeah. I really feel that there is a very important thing which you probably nurtured in yourself, and maybe your mentors helped you to do that, and we will talk about them a little bit later. That you have a balance. You have a very healthy balance between understanding that you are doing your work as well, as good as you can, as creatively as you can, and it doesn't, like, the moments of failure don't make you a bad perfumer. So you are still keeping yourself strong, and you still could create, and you still are not really feel it as a failure. And I believe this balance is very important for absolutely any position, project, whatever. Because sometimes after a chain of, well, I don't want to call them even failures, like after a chain of these learning curves, you might just lose totally yourself, your self-confidence, your understanding, your feelings about yourself, and even this very important something inside which previously kept you going. So this balance is something I really feel we need to nurture in ourselves.
Well, the most important part is to take advantage. It's not easy, but to take advantage of the failures, saying, okay, what did I do wrong? Or how could I do better the next time? If you just fail and you switch to another topic, and you don't stop just to process it and think,
Right.
what was wrong and how could I do it better in the future, it would be a double failure. I think, that if you don't take advantage of that, at least to improve yourself.
So, dear listeners, please take this piece of advice from Jerome right away. I mean, like, don't make a failure a double failure. Well, I would like to return to the role of mentors, but before that, I want to ask you it's like my personal question. When you studied, had this internship / I believe it's apprenticeship in French, probably at Givaudan.
Yes.
Yeah. Did you have it? Did you study perfumery raw materials by alphabet or by families already?
I studied everybody used to study it by families, because you compare in the same family. For example, you will compare all the woods or all the spices, and you will notice the difference if you compare them between them. Like, for example, if you compare various qualities of cedar wood, you will smell the differences. For example, the Atlas is a bit more leathery, a bit more dirty. The one from Virginia smells like a bit like a wood box or like a drawing pen.
Yeah.
So that's how you manage to memorize them.
I see.
Like you relate them to also a lot of personal memories, which helps you assimilating all the raw materials, because there's so many of them that we have access to, that it's you have to find personal tricks to remember them.
So that's why I wanted to ask, have you ever had a fight maybe with your mentors about somebody saying, oh, this is a, I don't know, citrus family, and you're like, no, guys, it's a, I don't know, let's say floral.
It's in perfumery, it's very subjective sometimes.
Indeed, that's why I asked whether it was by families or by alphabet, as it was like 30, 40 years ago.
And also it's a very lonely learning. Like, even if you have a mentor, you have your own memory and you have your own way to process the memorization of all the raw materials. So if you if you don't manage to do it yourself, nobody can do that for you. So
Exactly.
maybe a mentor here in this part of this learning, they can help you um, with technical tricks or with advices or maybe some commentaries like, oh, for me, coriander, I remember it because the leaf, it smells like soap, something soapy like mandarin, but the seed, it smells very floral, like linalool, like freesia. So they could give you some tips, some maybe the way they manage to memorize it. But you have you have your own nose and you have your own memory, so you have to find your way to memorize them. And that's why the first year in Givaudan, I remember spending hours and hours alone at my desk with boxes with numbers on the small samples to make blind tests of of raw materials, like blind test all the day to make like um a larger scope of what are the raw materials. It's there's so many of them that it's a very hard work at the beginning,
Totally.
and you have to go through this stage, which is not the easiest one or the funniest one, but it's like I used to compare it to painting as well. You have to understand what are the colors that you have at your palette and the different shades of them. Like maybe sometimes you won't use uh, a fluo pink the same way that you use a pastel one. And you have to understand what is the difference between them. And it's quite the same with the raw materials. You can't be a good painter if you don't even know how to handle your own palette.
Totally. And you know, when you said that it's very lonely, I don't know why. Really don't know. But it's just we're talking about feelings and emotions, which are very important to acknowledge, as you've also mentioned in one of the interviews for the creative person, especially, and also for the customers. However, I had the privilege to visit the Givaudan Perfumery School, the one we are talking about. And when you said lonely, I unfortunately could say that this is exactly the feeling I got there. You have everything. I mean, virtually everything, I believe, like to smell and to make your research on and to memorize. But again, you might think like, oh, I will have a mentor and they will tell me what to do. Well, if their description of something does not stick with you, or you find something special about a raw material and somebody doesn't feel it that way, you're lonely. If you're sitting in one, like you yourself in the lab with these like small whales which are everywhere, but the fact that you will be left alone with your studies, in fact, with your studies you think which will make you very happy, but maybe not, is something we often forget, because some people learn differently. Not everyone learns very well staying alone with a subject of their dreams.
And it's true that even when you become a perfumer, you are alone with your formula. And the good point is that nowadays people are working more together. Like we are doing creative teams with 2 or 3 perfumers. So sometimes when you are stuck in your formula, you might have some help from another perfumer. But it's true that in this learning process, you are by yourself. And I felt because after Givenchy, I've been working at Takasago with Francis Kurjan. And it's true that I felt, again, this kind of loneliness because I was on my desk in my office and I was learning by myself because I remember having schedules meeting with Francis like twice a week maybe. And we were reviewing all the topics together during 1 or 2 hours. And then all the rest of the week, I was by myself at the lab or at the office. And it's a long process that you have to handle by yourself, and that's just how you learn, like trying again and again and again, and that's how you can improve your technical skills.
Frankly, I find a lot of bravery, I believe this is the right word, and courage in that way of learning, because many people don't really understand how difficult it might be.
It's just that it's long, and that it's in a way it's a good point when you're a perfumer, because you never stop learning. As the process is so long that I'm not the same perfumer that I was 3 years ago. And each day, sometimes I discover new ways of using a raw material that I was using during years. Or sometimes I think about there's some raw materials that I never use. And from a day to another, I discover an interest in it and a new way to use it. And I start using it everywhere. So it's a new era in my perfumery, you know? Each time that you have a new product, it might open doors to new creations.
All right.
And that was a very good point when I arrived at Man, because I had to adjust myself and my vision of perfumery to a totally new palette. Of course, we have common products with the other companies, but there are new naturals that I didn't have before. Like I'm thinking about all the fruits that I didn't have when I was at Takasago, and a new natural palette. So even if it's the same flower or the same spice, sometimes depending on the way you extract the product, it doesn't have this exact same olfactive result. So sometimes you have good surprises and sometimes not. And it gives you, like, it was really refreshing, creatively speaking, because it gave me a lot of new ideas to start working on. So I really enjoyed this new blank page in a way. I keep the skills that I had before. I improve them day to day, but I have a new palette. It's kind of like new toys to play with.
Right. Basically, it's also something I haven't thought about. You just already have had access to the palette from 3 major companies, which like in a quite short time, quite short for a perfumery learning, because it really takes a long time. And yeah, it's also something great. I haven't thought about it, that it really keeps you, again, like your neuroplasticity has to be very high to be able to adjust to these changes. And well, judging by what you're saying, you really like it. I mean, these challenges.
Yeah, of course, it's very challenging. As you said, challenges, it's the word, because when I arrived at Man, I was with some raw materials, I was a bit lost. Some qualities of cedar wood, for example, I used to use such like a very specific amount of it, and it was a different quality. There were like terpenic, it's a very technical word, but a bit dirty facet on top, and I didn't realize first, and it was like ruining 9 of 10 of the composition I was working on, and I was, where is the problem? Where's the problem? So you have to adjust. It doesn't happen for all the raw materials, hopefully, but you have to adjust yourself to that.
This was one of the Blitz questions, but the fact that you mentioned cedarwood for the 3rd time during our short interview make me think that this is probably one of your favorite raw materials, is it?
It's not. I wouldn't say that it's my favorite, but it's true that it's kind of a chameleon raw material in a way, because when you have a look at the woods, sandalwood is very creamy, it's taking a lot of space. Vetiver might be a bit smoky, it's not very feminine. Patchouli, might be a bit vintage when it brings you to the chypre world. And cedarwood, you can use it in both feminine, masculine. You can use it almost in all the markets. It's kind the easy wood to work with. Like if you I don't know if I mastered it, but it's true that I use it almost every day. That's true.
Yeah. I'm just also sitting with a pencil and thinking about cedarwood.
Yeah.
At this point. So I also wanted to acknowledge you as maybe one of the first perfumers I've ever seen saying that it's very important to be able to communicate with customer and to be able to communicate thoroughly about fragrances. And I'm quoting you, in the age of social media. This is again something you also learned.
Yeah, I've learned it from Francis, of course, which he was, who was one of the first perfumer with Jean-Claude Helena maybe to be that exposed to journalists, to customers, and the communication was very important, and it's very important for him now in his position in Dior as well.
Yeah.
And I remember one day that he told me, I have to traduce it from the French, but he told me, what's the point if you have a fragrance that smells good, but you don't know how to talk about that? Like, it can't talk by itself. So you have to know how to explain what was your creative process beside it. It's kind of a story that you want to tell. Instead of telling it with words, you have to tell it with the raw materials. But in the end, you have to know how to talk about that in a press launch, to talk about that to I don't know, to the brand which is gonna pick up the fragrance or not. And it's a very important point in nowadays in the perfumer position, that you have to know how to talk about what you are working on in your day to day. That can make a very big difference.
Well, talking about languages, because you said like it's the first language of probably words which comes to your mind, or like the brief is quite often is in a written human language. Rarely it is in pictures or something, but I believe you might have had it anyways. But what language do you use for thinking? Because you know a lot, as I've noticed from the interviews, your background, at least four I counted.
Yes, actually, French is my native language, so I think in French, of course. But it's true that as I moved to Barcelona 2 years ago, sometimes I'm just thinking Spanish or dreaming Spanish, so it's quite weird. But it's more on my personal life. When I'm in my professional life, my mind is more switching on English or French, depending on who I'm working with. But it's true that regarding the fragrance industry, I'm thinking more in English. It's true.
Got it. Because it was very interesting for me. What language do you use for the thinking? And you've mentioned that, like your professional and personal life intertwined. And I wanted to ask you, what are maybe the things, and this is not the question I was thinking previously about, but when I talk to you, I feel that you're the right person to ask. What are maybe the personal space kind of things, personal comfort kind of things, which are important to keep yourself going again from one learning curve to another learning curve? So we know that professionally you are very well versed and you are trying to improve each day. But there are things apart from work which really influence how you work as a professional. So what do you feel are the most important pieces from your daily life when the perfumery work stops? And I understand it might never be stopping for you, which you would say to pay attention to.
I pay attention a lot of what is happening around us, because I think that I always say that a fragrance is a reflection to our society. Like when you are a perfumer, you're at the beginning with the brand, at the beginning of the creation, and when you will work on a fragrance, it take maybe a year to develop, and then they take a year to make the industrial process. So it might take 2 years from the beginning of the project to the moment that the fragrance is launched. So you have to have this kind of ability, I would say, of anticipation, to try to catch the signals that the society is sending, to understand what might people would like to wear in 2 years. Because the cycle is quite long. It's not fast fashion. Like you just send the product, it's in the market, it's selling, and it's over. You have a new one which replaces it. Fragrance is a long-term product. Like you have to think a fragrance to be to last in time.
Yeah.
So you have to try to understand what could fit the market in the next years or the next decade. I don't know if you go further. So what I pay attention to is the signals that the society is sending to us in other industries, other words, creative words. It can be fashion, but it can be music as well. It can be cinema. I like to get inspired. It's more on the creative side, but to get inspired from gastronomy, mixology, pastries, because it's in a way they are using the chef. They are using products that we have as perfumer at the palette most of the time. For example, if you try a cocktail with ginger and basil, you say, that could be a starting point from an idea because I have both at the palette. So you have to know how to work on that. But for me, it's a very important source of inspiration. And this idea of signals from the society is just that if you look at all the other industries, you might have some common bonds between each other, and that gives you an idea of what might come in the next years, or what is I don't know. What is interesting is to have a look at the series as well. All the trend of the pop music, and I think I'm very interested in that.
Yeah.
I think it's very interesting as a perfumer to keep the connection with that. And it's funny because I'm a lot lately I've spent a lot of time on TikTok, not that much in Instagram. And in TikTok you see a very strong community about fragrances and a lot of passionate people. And for me it's a very good tool for a perfumer to have it, because you don't have the time to smell all the launches, because now it's just crazy. There are so many brands and so many launches. But in a way, the social medias helps you making like a filter. So it gives you the trends in a way about what is working or what it's not. And as a perfumer, I'm following it very closely.
I feel very inspirational when you're saying that, and I feel that I need a notebook to put there my conscious observation notes. Because on the one hand, like you go around and you see things, but sometimes you don't really pay attention to them. Maybe you do it naturally, but I quite often might feel that something is there, but then I forget. And maybe I believe like making notes would be a good tool for me. So I learned from you here. And about the TikTok, oh my God. I mean, I so again acknowledge that you are very, very flexible in terms of learning.
It's just that you have to adjust yourself to the society you are living in, or you're gonna be creating things outdated. You're gonna miss the train in a way. We say it in French. I don't know if it's correct in English.
One. I believe in every language we have the miss the train analogy. Yeah.
But you have to keep yourself connected to that, or you're gonna miss it. You're gonna miss all the interest that the new generation might have. If it's the way they are consuming it, if it's the way they are talking about fragrances and all the rest, you have to try at least to understand what's gonna be the interest for them tomorrow in fragrances.
I agree. Since they're not on another planet, we need to like keep ourselves together and work on it.
Yeah, it's true that most of the time people have this kind of cliche image of the perfumer, which think about its own creative ideas and whatever, but it's more the perfumer is working for brands. The perfumer is working to make fragrances not for him. It's just for, it's a gift to the consumer, to people passionate about fragrances. So you don't have to lose it from sight. You have to remember that you are doing for who you are creating fragrances.
Yeah.
And you are offering your skills and your passion to that, to create fragrances for people.
Maybe this approach really explains why you're a very successful perfumer. I mean, because the brands, they also follow their customers very attentively, and you do it as well.
I try, because you have to speak the same language. So it helps in a way.
Well, I believe it could be a very long podcast episode, so I will probably stop asking very big questions right now. But I will ask you a few blitz questions, if I could.
Okay.
So what's your favorite dessert?
Okay, it's tiramisu.
Oh.
It's quite cliche because Di Marino, my Italian part speaking here, but I'm a big fan of tiramisu.
But they're so different.
No, yeah, and that's the problem, because I'm used to the recipe of my grandmother, and she used to put just a touch of alcohol from an alcohol from the Alps, and it's very herbal, it's very aromatic, and I've never found it anywhere else. So I'm missing this. I have the recipe, and when I visit her, she's doing it, but it's very hard to compete with this version of the tiramisu. But that might explain as well in fragrances that I love to work with coffee, with cocoa, with the gourmand nut, and you have all these unconscious memories which influence your creations as well.
So right now I'm sitting mouth watering, because I also love tiramisu. So, but Denmark is not the best country for this kind of dessert, not at all. But we have all sorts of pastry. So when you were talking about pastry, I was thinking that maybe the next inspirational trip would be to Copenhagen.
The pastries is very interesting, because the pleasure that offers sugar, you can try to reproduce it, through fragrances. It's always, I always talk about fragrances like perfumers are a bit magician. No, I don't know how you say it.
Yeah, magician,
Yes, you have to do magic tricks.
Yeah.
You have to make the illusion to recreate things through the smell, to make people getting, in a way, addicted to the fragrance as well.
Exactly. And I think sugar is a good analogy here, because some of the gourmand smells I use exactly for this purpose, because I'm trying to be refined sugar-free. So this is something I'm interested in as well. And talking about inspiration, so my next blitz question, what is your favorite place for inspiration?
I would say that I travel quite a lot, and the place that I like the most, I don't have a specific one, but Asia is a very interesting place, to be inspired, because the cultural difference is so big that it's, as a Occidental European people, it's very inspiring, because you might find new fruits that we don't used to eat here. And for example, in the Thai food, they used to combine very strong spices with citronella, with lime, that they have a very specific small lime, which is very strong. And it's very well balanced. And I'm always with the spices as well, the chili pepper. And I'm always very surprised how they manage to do such strong recipes, but everything is very well balanced. And I like to wander in the markets when I'm traveling there, because sometimes you rediscover as well, with the new point of view, products that you use in a different way in Europe. And for example, when I was in Mexico, they used to offer you salt or pepper on the mango, when they could cut slice of it, and they offered you to eat it with spices or salt, which is not at all the use that we are doing with the mango in Europe. So it's interesting because it gives you another point of view on product that you are used to already. So it's forced you to open your mind to new ways to experiment.
Well, that's very interesting. And also, I believe upon return from these trips, you could see your own place with a very fresh perspective again. This
Yes,
is also something.
and sometimes you have to force yourself to go out from your French or Occidental point of view, because the fragrances are dedicated to the entire world.
That's
Sometimes the brands say, okay, we are focusing on this market, but that's the hardest point, to go away, to go further from your own tastes.
And yeah, and trying mango with salt, something I will do today because I have a couple of mangoes, but from Spain. So I do not know if they are so ripe for the salt experiment because they're very fresh, like green type of mangoes. But I will probably try. So thank you for the tip. One fragrance you wish you had created.
I'm a lot into Oris fragrances, and I think that's not something that is very weird, because I've worked a lot on Oris fragrances because I love them.
Nice.
And for me, I'm hesitating because I'm a big fan of Infusion d'Iris, but also Jérôme. And for me, they are both masterpieces. So I would like to have created one of them.
Well, we will hope that it's going to be like something third you will create and will be satisfied with this. And
Hope
my
so.
last question. So what book is on your nightstand right now?
I just finished one which is called Le Monde de Sophie, which is the world of Sophie. Actually,
Yeah.
it's some, I don't know if he's Swedish, maybe the author. And I read it for the second time because it's quite, there's a lot of information, and it's about the story of a little girl, and she's meeting like a guy which is not a psychologist, and he's starting to teach her the story of humanity, since the creation of the world to the Roman Empire, to first the Greek heritage, then from Socrates, and then it talks about Roma. And from that moment to Freud, to the day-to-day human way of thinking about the world. It's very interesting because it's talking about a very serious topic through the eyes of a young girl, and she starts to ask herself, and if I'm learning that from somebody out from school, what am I learning at school? Like, and it's quite
It's good. It's good. It's about
good
the educational
topic,
system.
I would say, but it's very interesting. And there are so many information in this book that I wanted to. That's why I read it for the second time, because I want to take more information of it.
And it's also very interesting because this choice of book even goes in line with you, because you want to explore world from different perspective as much as you can, and you seem to be open to any perspective, including the child's one.
Yes, and I like this historical background as well, which is explaining a lot of things, of our actual society.
I believe I will order it from the Danish library. By the way, the author is Norwegian, so you were very close. I mean, when
I was Norwegian. Okay.
yeah, but well, you stay in Gardner, but we will leave the link in the description box because I think it sounds very intriguing.
That's a good one.
Right. Well, I was very happy talking to you, Jérôme. Thank you for it.
It was a pleasure, honestly.
Thanks. Well, this was it.